Welcome to Fact Friday. Today is May 2nd of 2025. Tomorrow is a board meeting here in Camp Branch Acres. So today we're going to discuss Camp Branch Acres, the legal battle for our community. Our community stands at a crossroads. This is the story of why we're fighting, what's at stake, and why we won't back down. So for those who don't know, on April 29th, Mike and I did file a lawsuit at District Court in Groveton against Kelly Rom and Kelly Harrell for the unauthorized corporate formation. The lawsuit is an injunction request from the judge. Basically, we want a judgment that states that this corporation is not valid, it's not legitimate, and for the association to continue operating as the unincorporated nonprofit association it has always been. So why resort to a lawsuit? Because we tried everything else. We gave a generous timeline. We offered mediation. We even said, if you think the property owners want this corporation, then let's vote on it. If they approve it, we'll stand down. In fact, we'll even help it become legally valid if the property owners ratify it. We will do what we can to help get things into compliance with the corporate code. All of that was declined. Our demand was simple: close the unauthorized corporation. It was formed by Kelly Harrell, who listed herself as the founder, with Joe, Travis Elliott, and Kelly Rom as the board. In fact, they're still listed as the managing directors with the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State records confirm it. May 28th of 2024, that's the effective date of that corporation. Corporation did not exist before that date. This corporation is not our association. Camp Branch Acres Property Owners Association has been an unincorporated nonprofit association since the 1960s. There was no vote to dissolve that entity, no plan to transition assets. This corporation threatens the legal existence of our real association. And this place matters. It's where Mike and I were married. It's where we play, meet, have family reunions, do all kinds of things with family. It's where mom has retired and dad is planning on retiring. So we're not going to sit back and watch two individuals dismantle a 50-plus year legal association with no authority and no plan. So what does this lawsuit mean? Well, it means we want a legal ruling, a clear answer. We're not suing to make money. We're suing to determine once and for all what is legal here. If we win, we return. Well, I won't say return because I don't think we deviated from it, but we remain the unincorporated nonprofit we've always been. If we lose and the court rules the corporation is valid, then at least we'll know. Nobody can come along in 5 years and say, hey, this corporation wasn't legal, it wasn't authorized, it wasn't formed legally, it's not legal, shut it down. We're trying to avoid a Port Adventure situation where the POA and the roads fell apart after a couple people got on the board and started saying nothing had ever been done legally before. But let's be real. I highly doubt the corporation will be found valid. And why? Well, it wasn't authorized. It wasn't authorized by the board. It wasn't authorized by the property owners. And we even have the audio recording where Kelly Harrell said that Kelly Rom had nothing to do with it, that it was all on her authority, which, by the way, you can't make a nonprofit corporation on one person's authority. It has to be a minimum of 3. And Kelly Rom was listed as the registered agent on the form. So if she wasn't involved, then there's fraud there whenever she was listed as registered agent. So also the directors were listed without consent. Joe Chambers clearly states he didn't vote for any of this. He didn't make this decision. This wasn't him. Travis not so clearly states he's wishy-washy. Oh, I don't remember if I made a decision or not. I'm thinking that his memory may improve with a deposition. The registered agent address is also invalid. As a corporation, you don't have to do this as a POA, but as a corporation, you have to have a address where somebody can serve you with a lawsuit during regular business hours, like banking hours, 9 to 5, no holidays, that kind of thing. Well, the address they gave was 125 West Big Lake, which is a mailbox that's not attached to a piece of land. In fact, you can't even get informed delivery on it through the Postal Service because they don't recognize it. Um, that's a problem. And there was no transition plan. Usually, when a business entity goes from, like, let's say, an LLC to a corporation, or a sole proprietor to an LLC to an LLP, there is a transition plan. In fact, there's for most of those transitions, there is a uh, application to be filled out and filed with the Secretary of State. And then they also require a transition plan where you're going to account for assets, real property, property deeds, right of ways, all that kind of thing. Also, the existence of the corporation was hidden from board members and property owners until it was discovered by a property owner, and yes, that was me, in September of 2024. How is this a legitimate corporation when you didn't let the new treasurer know that they would fall under new tax laws? How is this a new corporation when the new board wasn't aware that it was a corporation? How is this legitimate? It just isn't. And the transition of assets was not accounted for. Once again, there was no plan, there was nothing written down. Accounts got mixed willy nilly. Assets were being deposited under one EIN into a bank account attached with another EIN. PayPal was being told that this money was coming in as transactions between friends and family. So property owners were being told to lie to PayPal instead of saying that they were given money to a association. And while the Kellys preach about Texas property code and how we need to be in compliance, there's really only about 6 things that really need to be updated if we're just going to be in compliance with Texas property code and Chapter 252, the Unincorporated Nonprofit Association regulations. They clearly haven't read Chapter 22 of the Texas Business Organizations Code, which is the law that actually governs nonprofit corporations. And that could fill a book in and of itself. We're so out of compliance with Chapter 22 that it would take a legal team to fix it. And maybe that's why they wanted $3,500 for legal expenses in the budget this year. So anyways, they're so far out of compliance with Chapter 22. And honestly, I think that was the point. Now, this is where Fact Friday becomes just speculation. So if you just want to hear hard facts, then this is about the time to go ahead and sign off. But I've been wondering, why all this craziness? Why has this come up? Why this little association? I mean, it's a fishing village at the end of the day. It has been for generations. People remember coming up here as kids, and now they're adults, and now their kids are up here. How did we all of a sudden start putting on the mantle of charity and corporation and all of this other stuff? Well, here's my theory. The washout happened April 29th of 2024. And the quotes started coming in to repair that, and it looked expensive, really expensive. We're talking 6 digits without an engineer. And Kelly Ron was stating that we had to get an engineer's stamp, that's what the property owners wanted. So now we're looking at, with an engineering firm being involved, I'm $250,000 is not out of the realm of possibility there for quotes. But so they got what, 2 between April and September, maybe 3. They were all expensive except for Dad's because he was going to be able to use his company to get us things at cost. So, meanwhile, Kelly was misinforming outside groups that saying that we're not a nonprofit, or she was talking to the county and saying, "Oh my gosh, they said we're not even legal." It's because she didn't understand how Texas law treats unincorporated nonprofit associations. So this misunderstanding and misrepresentation of us as a for-profit, because if we're not a nonprofit, guess what we are? We're a for-profit. This misrepresentation effectively ended any chance of the POA receiving disaster assistance. And then the Kellys saw the loophole. What do you do if you live above the washout and you want to avoid a big bill? And what if you never wanted an association to begin with? You don't want people telling you what you can do, what you can build, what you can raise. You don't want this big bill for a road. You just want to be on Little Lake or, just away from the big lake. You're just like, I don't need to get down there. I don't use the boat ramp. I, yeah, I don't live that far in on the road. Like, it won't cost me that much to maintain my little road. Well, then you incorporate. You say, well, we've always been incorporated so that nobody questions it. You just make it like, oh, yeah, we've always been incorporated. That's just the way we've been. And if challenged, if somebody shows you that you haven't been incorporated, then you say, well, we had to because we weren't legal before. But here's the real trick. Under a corporation, the board could vote to dissolve the corporation, claiming that they can't meet fiduciary duties, and just walk away. As a nonprofit corporation, we wouldn't even get our money back. It would need to be donated to another nonprofit corporation. So the board could say, we don't meet our fiduciary duties and we walk away, especially when the corporate formation documents state that the responsibility for its governance lies only with the board of directors, which at that time was Kelly Rom, Kelly Harold, Travis Elliott, and Joe Chambers. And remember, Joe is the only one who has clearly stated he didn't know about the corporation. So, no vote from the community needed. You can just make a quiet exit, leaving those on the washout side to fend for themselves. And you can walk away from your responsibilities and not have a big bill. But things didn't go according to their plan. If that was their plan, several things went wrong. First of all, Jerry and Charlene were elected. I think they thought they were going to have 5 people on the board that was all gung-ho for just dropping the association and getting out of Dodge without having the bill. So Jerry and Charlene were elected, and shortly after that, Kelly and Phil introduced a code of ethics designed to force Jerry and Charlene off the board if they didn't comply. And this was a draconian code of ethics. It talked about how only the chair can represent the community, only the chair can speak an opinion, only the chair this, only the chair that. It read like a dictatorship, a guide like Dictatorship for Dummies. It wasn't about ethics. It was about removing opposition. However, Mike and I had an opinion letter from the Fears Law Group out of Dallas explaining how illegal that ethics code was to enforce. Now, it's really interesting because Phil later said that he didn't read it. He didn't realize that there was anything about proxy votes in there and that he hadn't actually read the document because it did talk about the ethics code, but it also talked about how proxy votes remained a legal option for people to use to vote here in our association. Travis also at the meeting, we handed out the printout of the legal opinion letter, which he handed back to Mike and said, I don't need to read that BS. So, some notable people trying to not be informed on what was going on. The ballot initiative also failed. So, on the same day that Jerry and Charlene were elected, there was the ballot initiative that stated that the board would be able to change governing documents to maintain compliance based upon their own interpretation of the law. I'm really glad that this initiative failed, and it was actually fairly close because I don't think everybody really read into. We just always assume people had good intentions, right? So for the most part, people say, well, if the board needs to change something, I guess they need to change something. I don't think that initiative would have such a close vote anymore because we've seen what happens when people go rogue. The third thing that happened was the FEMA recipients began actually fixing the road. After months of impaired 911 access, including 2 firework holidays where, there's always the fear of fire up here whenever the fireworks are flying. No answers, a couple quotes, nothing getting done. The FEMA recipients took over the road repair project and made things happen. The road was repaired, but some disgruntled property owners still wanted a way out of the association. But the main excuse for walking away from the association was now being fixed. So the fourth thing that happened, the biggest thing that happened, was the community woke up. Tim started a new Facebook group because the old one had been shut down by the POA. Tim started a Facebook group in April of 2024. Somebody launched a satire site. Mike and I began recording meetings and posting those meetings to YouTube, along with some interesting quotes from people in semi official settings at times. And legal advice started being sought by a group of property owners. Now, the board can't quietly fold up shop. They have an informed, engaged, and legally aware community watching every move. So the board shifted tactics. Now the emphasis was on silencing opposition, telling people that they couldn't record meetings, delaying meetings, muting property owners at board members, even muting board members at the Zoom meetings, transitioning meetings to just Zoom, not as an option, but as the only thing. Postponing elections, claiming everything's too messy to hand off to leadership. We're in too much of a mess for somebody else to take this over. Never mind, sometimes the mess is the one that you made. And attempting dissolution. So the very first agenda item for the very first meeting in 2025 was to add wording to dissolve the association. Kelly Rahm said, yeah, I think this association needs to go because it doesn't work. They couldn't do it quietly on their own. So they put it to the property owners, but that vote was handily defeated. The very next vote, well, we don't own roads, so we can't maintain them. And that vote was also defeated. So this lawsuit, it's not about drama. It's not about revenge. It's not political. If it was, they would have been served tomorrow at the meeting. Instead, they were served by the constable today. It was our last recourse. It's a line in the sand that says you can't lie, sneak, or manipulate your way into dissolving a legal association. We will fight for this community and we will fight for what is legal. And win or lose in court, we win by getting the truth on record and protecting the integrity of Camp Branch Acres. Thank you for listening. I have my contact information here. You're always welcome to email me. You can put comments on these YouTube videos. You can come over to cbapoa.org and see if I've got anything posted. And of course, we're on the Camp Branch Acres Facebook page. My family, it's Tim's group. I also help administer it. You can reach it by going to campbranchfriends.com or go to Facebook and search for Camp Branch Residents. I love this picture, neighbors helping neighbors. Thank you, and y'all have a great weekend.